Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, a reminder of our top stories tonight. Emergency services in Portugal say at least 15 people have died and around 18 others have been injured after a carriage derailed and crashed on Lisbon's iconic Gloria funicular railway. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is facing calls to resign after admitting not paying enough stamp duty on the purchase of a new flat. She told Sky News she had considered packing in politics but wants to stay in her role. And the head of the Metropolitan Police has said his officers shouldn't be policing culture wars debates following the arrest of Father Ted creator Graham Linehan over tweets about trans people. Well, hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. So, time to see what's making the headlines then with the Daily Mirror columnist, Kevin Maguire, and the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Baroness Arlene Foster. Lovely to see both of you. Welcome. Well, plenty to talk about. Let's take a look at the front pages, shall we? Starting with the Financial Times. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner's fight for political survival makes the front of the FT after she admitted to underpaying stamp duty on a flat. It also leads The Guardian, which claims she's in peril despite being backed by the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. While The Times writes Angela Rayner is on the brink over the stamp duty error. That story is also on the front of the Metro with the headline, "A No Rayner," as Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch calls for her to be sacked. The Telegraph also leads on the Deputy Prime Minister's admission that she should have paid more stamp duty. 3 pads, 0 excuses. That is the front page of tomorrow's Sun. The Express leads on the pressure on Sir Keir Starmer to sack Angela Rayner following the revelation, as does the Daily Mail, asking, is Starmer so spineless that he won't sack his Deputy PM who dodged £40,000 in stamp duty? And the Star carries the same with the headline, Angela Blamer. Meanwhile, the Mirror has this story on Virginia Giuffre's family calling for files on Jeffrey Epstein to be released. So let's get the thoughts then of Kevin and Arlene. Welcome to both of you. Nearly a clean sweep on the newspapers after Beth Rigby's interview with Angela Rayner, in which she admits she got it wrong on tax. So what happens now and how in peril, Kevin, is she?
She is in peril, quite serious danger. It's somewhat in the balance. I can't predict which way it will go.
Neither can I, but I think it largely depends on what her colleagues in the Labour Party have got to say, because I think if they feel that she's going to be a continuing burden to them, then I think that's where the pressure will come.
But the FT, which doesn't have a political dog in this fight, says really she's fighting for her political survival. And they say her fate is in the hands of Laurie Magnus, the ethics advisor. I think that is true to the extent that if he finds she's failed in some way, has not followed advice, not even asked for the correct advice, then I think she's finished. But because she's the housing secretary, it is possible that he could say, no, she didn't do anything wrong, but just the political pressure builds, the media pressure continues, and then she might have to go.
There are multiple issues for her. It's not just a double whammy, it's a multiple whammy. One, she was Labour's enforcer-in-chief, complaining about one rule for them, one rule for the rest of us. 2, the housing minister dodging a homes tax. And 3, said homes taxes might be increased in the budget, as part of the wealth tax. The timing is terrible.
Yeah, and the political damage is enormous because she was one of Labour's more popular figures, and that working class background, leaving school 16, no exams, but a child on the way. Mother was very troubled trying to feed her dog food at one time. She's made her way in life, and that's absolutely incredible. But she must sit in that, if she ever sits in it again, that whole flat. It'll be a gilded cage. But the story started that she had 3 homes. It was 3 homes Rayner. There was some envy and snobbery about that. Pictures of her with a little bag. And look at this woman vaping on a canoe and so on. But the tax issue is the money issue.
But I think the hypocrisy issue, Kevin, is through, because she was very hard on the Tory party whenever they had difficulties. Nadeem Zahawi today tweeting, you didn't worry about my children when you were attacking me, because she has, in the Beth Rigby interview, I think, come across as a mother. She's come across as somebody who is very upset about what has happened to her for the reasons she has set out. But I think there's very little sympathy for her, certainly on the right, because of the enforcer-in-chief position that she took up with a lot of Tory ministers.
The Guardian has a big photograph. They've all got similar photographs.
Yeah.
The big photograph of her effectively in tears talking to Beth.
Yeah.
She talks about the pain of what this does to her children,
yeah,
and the support she's had from her family, including her ex-husband. You can see it in parts of this. As a politician who's been in the heat of these moments, how hard is it when you have the full glare of the media on you about an issue which you then had to seek subsequent advice because the first advice wasn't right, for example?
Well, let me say this: when and people criticise politicians for showing emotion and crying, and we had it with Rachel Reeves, and now we have it here as well. When you are talking about your family and your children, that for me was, you know what I mean? It's always a pressure point, because you can talk about policies and you can be tough and you can do all of these things, but once you're talking about your personal circumstances, and I tried at all times to shield my family from anything that was going on politically, then that is a very tough position. So I can empathise, absolutely, when I watched that today. But I think her difficulty is because she was so hard on issues against Tory ministers, and they're saying, well, hold on, you didn't worry about my children when you were attacking me for things like that.
Yeah, well, in politics, it's a bit, you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Absolutely. You reap what you sow.
Probably, uncomfortable in a way, violent imagery. And some time ago, a Tory former minister told me when she had the row over the council house sale before the election, he said, well, he didn't say anything publicly, but he said, there's no sympathy on our side because she always went for us. Now, Zahawi, I could see why he comes from his position.
Yeah.
But his case was millions of pounds, and it was shares held in a way. The Inland Revenue went after him, and I believe penalties were paid. Now, if she pays the Inland Revenue and there are no penalties levied because they're satisfied she didn't try to deliberately avoid.
Necessarily matter.
Well, it does. It doesn't. It doesn't.
Said we are going to clean up allegations of Tory sleaze, and you had the clothes gate, you had the free ticket gate, and you had the anti-corruption minister who was seemingly caught up in a corruption allegations via her aunt in Bangladesh, and now you've got the housing minister dodging a homes tax.
No.
That is a long list.
Look, but is she a dead duck or a lame duck? I mean, that's the area we are in now. Now, if she could prove it was an honest mistake, then it's somewhat different.
Yeah, let's move on to the Telegraph on that thought then. The key question is, will she publish the advice that she got? Who did she ask of it? When did she ask it? And when did she get the correction? Because her people were out saying that she'd done all the right things, until effectively this morning. And
all those questions have to be answered. There's no doubt. She, I think, will stand or fall on the advice she asked for legally and financially. Well, of course, and as Dan Needle, a tax expert, pointed out, if she didn't ask for it, then you're negligent. Right, well, I bought a house. But when I bought a house, the solicitor asked, "Do you own any other properties?" I didn't, and they said, "Right, this is your." This is your tax. This is what you owe on stamp duty. Now, if she's thought, because she sold her stake in the family home to the son's trust, that she no longer owns a house, she's going to be in trouble for not checking what the real position is.
Because she's the housing minister.
The housing secretary in the cabinet.
But the point that she's made, which is the trust is in the ownership effectively of a child, effectively, or children. One quick search on the HMRC website makes it clear that you still, therefore, are liable. And so that is not that complicated. It's very clear. Daily Mail, another day in Labour's socialist utopia. We had this yesterday as well. Is Starmer so spineless that he won't sack his deputy prime minister who dodged £40,000 in stamp duty? So they're making about Sir Keir Starmer and his authority then here, Arlene.
And I think it'll be interesting to know what he knew and when he knew it, because he was actually defending her, wasn't he, up until very recently, and saying it was all about because she was a working class girl who had done good, as it were, and people were briefing against her. I think that was just at the weekend. So what did he know and when was he told? Now, I went into Prime Minister's Questions today to watch the chemistry that was going on, and he came in and made a great effort to acknowledge her and back her up.
That's interesting. I mean, you brought up Rachel Reeves. Watching it today, and you don't want to judge or presume, but he looked like he had two broken women next to him, either side of him today. As I watched it, I thought Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner.
Well, certainly Angela looked very broken, I have to say. Now, she was putting on a very brave face on it, but she did look broken.
But Prime Ministers have no choice but to back cabinet ministers. Yes. And it's rather like chairs of football clubs saying, the manager's great, and then the following day, they are gone. Now, Starmer is going to face, if he sticks with Rayner, he's going to have hypocrisy accusations because he got rid of Lou Hague, the Transport Secretary, over a mobile phone.
That's right.
Which she said she disclosed fully. Young woman gets mugged, reported to the police. What's been stolen later on finds the phone is actually in a drawer. No evidence of any financial gain. Of course, the phone is replaced by the company, I believe, but she didn't sell the other phone or anything like that. And he gets rid of her now. He got rid of her for political purposes, I believe, because she was on the soft left and rallying other people in the Labour Party who wanted a more radical, more Labour government. If he sticks by Rayner after this issue over £40,000 tax, which of course in the past she said you don't pay your tax, you deprive your public services, and so on. He's gonna get flack for that too.
Yeah. The Sun's verdict excoriating 3 pads, 0 excuses. One does wonder if they can persist with any form of property-led wealth taxes in the budget because of what's happened, Darlene. Will this change?
Well, I think it's already changing what is happening in Downing Street, because we understand that any ministerial reshuffle that was taking place early next week will probably now be delayed till we see what the fallout is in relation to Angela Rayner. So it's already starting to have an impact. And the fact that the budget is now not coming until the 26th of November gives them a breathing space as well to deal with whatever's in front of them.
It's a huge political crisis. It's a personal crisis for Angela Rayner. It's a massive political crisis for the Labour Party and the Prime Minister. There's no question. But if she gets to the Labour Party conference, which is at the end of September in Liverpool, I've no doubt she'd stand up, do a mea culpa, and then deliver a barnstorming speech, and it'll be shouting her praises to the rafters. But how does the rest of the country feel about it? That's what we're not quite sure about, because people like Nigel Farage so far hasn't criticised her from reform. Ed Davey's been very sympathetic, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, because he has a disabled child himself and knows the arrangements you have to make can be quite complex. And generally, if I hear the word trust, I think there's something really, really dodgy about it. But I can see in cases of children who then become adults who can't manage their own affairs, they need to be looked after. Although it's quite interesting, in the Telegraph, they say, whether it's true or not, that she sold her remaining 25% stake in that house up in Greater Manchester with £162,500 received for the deposit. It involves the money he got as part of an NHS medical settlement.
And you see, even the fact that we're explaining about trusts and NHS compensation, it's all very complicated, and people are going, I don't really understand this, but what I do know is that she avoided paying tax.
Yeah, well, you boil it down,
and I think that's where she's in real difficulties. And if I was a betting woman, which, as you know, I'm not, I would think she is in real difficulties.
Yeah, she is in real. Do you think she'll survive or go?
No, I don't think she will survive. And do you know what would be better for her? And I've said this to you outside. It would be better if she goes quickly, and then she could come back later on. If she goes, and says, look, I'm causing damage to the Labour Party, I'm causing damage to what we're trying to do, so I'm going to go to the backbenches, and she could come back. I mean, others have done it.
And we wait for the ethics report, clearly, don't we?
But Labour has a problem. The deputy leader is an elected position.
Sure.
So could you survive as deputy leader but not as deputy prime minister and housing secretary?
Yeah.
OK, interesting. You mentioned Nigel Farage. He's obviously abroad, perhaps not catching up on the news. Free speech on the front burner. Ongoing fallout from the arrest of comedy writer Graham Linehan, plus Nigel Farage's testimony to the US Congress when we come back.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over.
Full stop.
Anyway, we'll get to that.
She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
These are crazy. It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat.
It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island.
The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre.
The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin.
Jerry, any comments on the judge's decisions? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry? This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial.
Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris.
Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as president and leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky's security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview. With me once again, Kevin Maguire and Baroness Foster. Welcome back to both of you. So, Arlene, let's talk about free speech, shall we? And what happened to the Father Ted co-creator, and what the Met Police has now said about that.
Well, the Met Police are saying, and it's on the front page of The Guardian, that they shouldn't be policing culture war. So basically they're saying, you've put us in this invidious position where you have given us laws that we have to investigate, and now you're criticising us when we do investigate it. My point about all of this is they did not, and they say they were airport police, so they are routinely armed, and that's the way they always are. But why did it take 5 police officers of any nature, never mind armed police officers, to arrest somebody coming off a plane for tweeting something, which was quite disgraceful, let's be honest about it. But why didn't they invite him in for an interview? Why didn't they invite him in for an interview? And then if he didn't come, then you go and arrest him. But they didn't even give him the choice. They just took him off a plane with 5 armed officers. And I'm sure people on the plane were thinking, what is going on here?
So for you, this is a ways and means of doing it, rather than talk to somebody who may have been inciting violence.
It's totally disproportionate. I think it sends a really dangerous message about policing in our country, actually. If the law says if somebody makes a complaint then they have to investigate it. I absolutely accept that if the law says that. However, they could have done it in a much better way.
With a tweet or social media post, you can investigate by looking at it and thinking, does it pass a test?
Yeah.
I don't think it does pass a test. He's become an obsessive who gets in really aggressive, nasty arguments, and I've seen him attack other people. He wanted to go at me, and I thought, just leave him alone, because his life has just turned upside down. But is it a legal issue? Should it involve the police? Now, I can see that some trans people will feel it should, because they feel intimidated and under threat. But then it's become a terrible argument, because then you see death threats against J.K. Rowling and other people on the other side of it. But I feel for the police here, and I think the head of the Met is right, Mark Rowley, that look, it's got to be made clear, because it did feel like they were policing a culture war.
Yeah, well, let's go to Nigel Farage, who is, listening to him today, a free speech absolutist, like Elon Musk as well, speaking to Congress, to the US House Judiciary Committee, bringing up Lucy Connolly, who had asked for, asylum hotels to be set fire to, that he said she pulled it 3 hours later, talking about the disgrace of Britain.
Yeah.
Now, I know the Prime Minister said he's disgraceful and unpatriotic going to America talking down our country, so...
Yeah, well, I think his North Korea line is stupid, absolutely pathetic.
When did we become North Korea?
Yeah, well, we haven't, Nigel, and you're being daft. But he's not as absolutist as you would put it when the Reform Council in Nottinghamshire won't talk to the local paper. I'm sorry, I think what he means free speech is his speech, or people who agree with him, and some of them are very bigoted and racist and incite violence.
I apologise, we've run out of time. Yes, no, we definitely have. I thought maybe you could squeeze a sentence in, but no. Arlene Foster, Kevin Maguire, thank you both very much indeed. More from you both in the 11, more on the top stories of the day. Back soon.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live.
Joins us live.
All in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
It is 11 o'clock. This is Sky News' extended press preview, our top story. 15 people die as a carriage on a funicular railway, popular with tourists, crashes in the Portuguese capital, Lisbon. At least 18 other people have been injured, 5 seriously. Lisbon's mayor says the city is in mourning. Our other main story tonight, Rayner on the ropes. The Deputy Prime Minister faces calls to resign after admitting failing to pay enough stamp duty. In an exclusive interview, she tells our political editor, Beth Rigby, she considered standing down but wants to stay on.
Well, I made a mistake based upon the advice that I relied upon, that I received at the time, and a leading expert has now said that advice was wrong.
Plus, the head of the Met Police calls for a change in the law after an outcry over the arrest of comedian Graham Linehan. China declares itself unstoppable, putting on a huge show of force as a hot mic captures Xi Jinping and President Putin discussing immortality. Well, over the next hour, we will be discussing today's news with art reviewers Kevin Maguire and Baroness Arlene Foster. And later we'll have a full run-through for you of tomorrow's front pages. Well, hello, good evening. We begin with tonight's breaking news, and at least 15 people have been killed after a carriage on a funicular railway popular with tourists derailed and crashed in Lisbon. Let's show you the live pictures then from the scene in the Portuguese capital. The emergency services saying at least 18 other people were injured, 5 of them seriously, when the city's Gloria funicular, which transports passengers up and down a steep hill in the city, came off the rails. Tonight, Lisbon's mayor has said the city is in mourning. Well, over the next hour, we will bring you tonight's headlines, tomorrow's front pages and the views of our paper reviewers, the Daily Mirror columnist, Kevin Maguire, and the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Baroness Foster. First, though, our Europe correspondent, Siobhan Robbins, has the latest details on this evening's crash in Lisbon.
Yes, absolutely horrendous scenes coming out of Lisbon this evening. As you were saying, this popular Gloria funicular, which takes people from the downtown of Lisbon up to the busy nightlife area, seems to have, one of the carriages has derailed just after 6 o'clock, so right in the middle of commuter time, and also at a time when this is extremely busy with tourists as well. Now, when you look at the pictures, you can see that one of the cars is extremely damaged. It's on its side. It's totally broken up. And for the last few hours, we've been watching the emergency services as they try to pull the injured and the dead from that wreckage. And this witness explains what she saw.
It fell about 1.5 meters and made a huge crash. It was packed. We stayed to help. But just as we were going to assist, we saw another tram coming downhill. The only thing we could do was turn and run towards the avenue. I looked back, and I'm sure at least one person managed to get out. They were on the pavement when the tram hit the building.
Well, really frightening scenes, as you say. At least 15 people have died, 18 people injured. We don't know the nationalities yet, although the Italian embassy has said that one of the injured is believed to be Italian. We have also got this from the British Foreign Office, who say, we are aware of the incident in Lisbon and are in touch with the local authorities. We stand by to provide consular assistance if there are any affected British nationals. And as it stands, the mayor has now declared 3 days of mourning.
Well, the live pictures, which have certainly shocked Portugal, shocked Lisbon with those 3 days of mourning. The Lisbon mayor extending his heartfelt condolences to all the families and friends of the victims. 6 p.m. this accident happened. You know, one of the most popular funiculars there. They work in tandem, one going up, one going down. And now, of course, the investigation underway into what happened. But, you know, this is historic, first of all, and really popular with tourists and used daily by people as well to get from downtown Lisbon up to the upper districts.
No, I've always walked that stretch, but I've seen them operating in Lisbon, and you kind of, you know, they look quite, in truth, attractive and exciting. You don't think they're dangerous, and I'm sure where we have, you know, seaside rides or wherever they are like this in Hastings or Bournemouth and elsewhere, they'll all be checked now. In the
yeah,
UK.
and that will obviously become the story later on. You know, what happened? How did this happen?
Yeah.
How did this occur? It is an old system, as I understand, and of course we're also waiting to see who the victims are, whether there are any British nationals involved, because of course Lisbon is a very popular destination.
Absolutely, and we heard Siobhan there suggesting the Foreign Office, we stand by to provide consular assistance if there are any affected British nationals. The Associated Press news agency suggesting that a child was among the injured, 5 of the injured in a serious condition, according to their National Institute for Medical Emergencies. An unknown number of foreigners were among the injured, it said, as well. And authorities called it an accident, the worst in the city's recent history, and it cast, a real shadow over Lisbon's charm for millions of foreign tourists who arrive every year, including at this time of year, obviously, as well.
Yeah, well, it is a wonderful city, and unquestionably. But you just got to think of all those families now waiting for news. And if tourists are involved, you know, it'll be harder to identify them and then contact people, and horrific. But if 15 people in the toll could rise.
You can see some of the mechanisms here with the the rail track, but the cabling as well, and that will be where the questions are. Whether a cable snapped, causing it to topple. What happened to both of these, that move in tandem, and where they ended up, and how it crashed into a.
Well, you can see the scale of the damage there. I think that shows very clearly that there's been a really terrible impact. And that's why you have so many people who sadly are deceased.
I know, but there's a risk in life.
Yeah,
in transport, whether you drive, cycle, trains, or planes, it's always up to make it safer.
Yeah.
And these, they look fantastic, but now, is that the end of it as well? Will it ever be repaired, restored and operate again? Or will they just say, right, we'll call it a day?
Yes, 140 years of history there. We'll certainly keep an eye on that story. But let's move on to our other main story today. And the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, fighting for her political future tonight after admitting she failed to pay enough stamp duty on the purchase of a seaside flat. She claims she was misled about the legal position. For now, at least, she still enjoys the backing of Sir Keir Starmer. But the Conservatives say her position, which includes, of course, the role of Housing Secretary, is now untenable. Speaking exclusively to our political editor, Beth Rigby, Ms Rayner admitted wrongdoing, revealed she has referred herself to the ethics watchdog and had briefly considered resigning.
Good morning, Minister. Are you setting a good example?
Angela Rayner in Downing Street yesterday, stepping into the new political term, only to find herself today now fighting for her political life. The Deputy Prime Minister told Sky News she underpaid stamp duty on her £800,000 seaside flat and has referred herself to the Prime Minister's ethics advisor.
I made a mistake based upon the advice that I relied upon, that I received at the time, and a leading expert has now said that advice was wrong. I'm rectifying it at the earliest opportunity. People make mistakes, but I conducted myself in trying to do the right thing. And I hope that people can see that.
In May, the Deputy Prime Minister bought a flat in Hove, but she only paid £30,000 in stamp duty when she should have paid £70,000 on this property because it was in effect deemed her second home. That's all because of this place, her family home in Greater Manchester that she shares with her disabled son and ex-husband. This home is in a trust for her teenage son to provide for him in later life. So when lawyers advised her she only needed to pay standard stamp duty on her Hove flat, well, she took that advice. That turned out to be wrong, and today the Deputy Prime Minister was forced to reveal details of her family life in an effort to clear her name.
I've been in shock, really, because I thought I'd done everything proper, and this trust was not something that I set up. It's not my money. It's not money that I put into the trust. This is to safeguard my son's needs for the future after a very devastating, injury and situation that came about for him. And even just saying that now, I feel that I'm giving away information about my son. That is his information. It's not for me to broadcast the challenges that my 17-year-old child has as he's navigating into adulthood.
Miss Rayner now finds herself facing accusations of being a tax dodger, having been very unforgiving of her political opponents in the past.
If this isn't a breach of the ministerial code, surely the code itself is wrong, Mr. Speaker.
Did you think about just packing it in rather than having to do this now?
I spoke to my family about it. I spoke to my ex-husband, who has been an incredibly supportive person.
You presumably have spoken to Keir Starmer about this. Do you have his full backing?
Well, Keir knows the circumstances and he obviously knows about the challenges that my son has faced.
But her explanation has done little to satisfy her critics who can smell blood.
I remember when the Prime Minister said that tax evasion is a criminal offence and should be treated as all other fraud. If he had a backbone, he would sack her.
But this leader more sympathetic to his rival's predicament.
As a parent of a disabled child, I think we should all reflect on the challenges that she has been through. We all worry about what's going to happen to our children when we've died. And I can see that in what Angela Rayner has said today.
There's no doubt tonight that Angela Rayner is a politician fighting for her political life, and she knows it. Because for all of the explanations around her complicated family life, at the heart of this matter is a Deputy Prime Minister and the Housing Minister who has underpaid on property tax. And this is from a politician calling for big tax rises from the wealthy to fund the economy, and who in the past has been highly critical of those politicians that have also come under fire in this sort of way. So this is politically fraught, it's reputationally extremely damaging for her, and while she's come out fighting, she knows that her political survival is now beyond her control. The PM and Cabinet colleagues have so far rallied around Angela Rayner, but her fate now lies in the hands of the Prime Minister's ethics advisor, who's investigating the affair. Whether she can keep her place at this table, now very much up in the air. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, here's how tomorrow's newspapers are covering that story on nearly every front page. The Deputy Prime Minister's fight for political survival there on the front of the FT after she admitted to underpaying stamp duty on a flat. It also leads The Guardian, which claims she's in peril despite being backed by the Prime Minister. While The Times writes Angela Rayner is on the brink over her stamp duty error. The Metro has the headline, "And no Rayner," as Tory leader Kemi Badenoch calls for her to be sacked. The Telegraph also leads on the Deputy Prime Minister's admission that she should have paid stamp duty. 3 pads, 0 excuses. That's the lead for The Sun. The Express reporting on the pressure now on Sir Keir Starmer to sack Angela Rayner, as does the Daily Mail, asking, is Starmer so spineless that he won't sack his deputy PM who dodged £40,000 in stamp duty? And the Star carries the same with the headline, Angela Blamer. So let's bring in Kevin and Arlene and go to the Sun straight away. 3 pads, 0 excuses. Arlene, does that mean she cannot survive a headline like that?
Well, they say 0 excuses in the Sun, but of course the excuse she has relied heavily on in the interview with Beth Rigby today is that she was given the wrong legal advice. I mean, that then leads you on to the question, well, what information did she give to the lawyers who were advising her? Because lawyers are only as good as the information they have to advise on. So this has now been looked at by the ethics czar, and he will look into that, but it'll have to be around what she asked for, what advice she gave back, and then what did she do after that. Yeah. So it is quite a complicated picture.
Yes, who she asked, and in fact, both the Daily Star, Angela Blamer, and the Daily Telegraph, I didn't pay the right tax, but it's still not my fault, both suggesting she's blaming an advisor as a means of, wriggling out of this effectively.
Yeah, well, she is blaming advisors, and that'll be scrutinised closely. But then is that enough to save you politically? Yeah. If it is the case, and you can show you are badly advised, I'm jumping ahead. Would that still be enough when you are the housing secretary and you've always been aggressive with Tory opponents who've been caught in scandals you haven't yourself? Now, but most newspapers are anti-Labour. So they're having a field day. But then there's also been some good journalism. I think there was some snobbery at the beginning. It was all about she had 3 houses. Well, she didn't really have 3 houses. What we now find out, of course, I think counting the Grace and Favour one was wrong. I mean, it's a glorified tied cottage, but the dealings with the Greater Manchester home and then buying the place in Hove are what have caused her all this grief. And after the row before the election about her council house sale some time ago, when a Tory MP reported her to the police and they investigated and he lost his seat and the police found there was nothing for them to chase after. I just thought when the stories first appeared that she would have just gone the extra mile to make sure everything was above board and completely bomb-proof. And so the stories would just be kind of a bit of snobbery having a go at her over the 3 flats, rather than this question coming up about how much stamp duty is paid.
But I think it has been good journalism, and journalism that was frankly pushed back on, because there's nothing to see here, everything's fine. And there was a lot of that over the weekend, that it was just the Daily Telegraph going after a Labour minister. But they are very clear in their paper, I think in their editorial tomorrow, they're saying her position is untenable. It would be outrageous if she carried on in this role, and I presume they mean by that the Housing Secretary.
Yeah, well, the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Tory graph has always been very, very hostile to her. But they've got something here now. Because she's admitted she paid £40,000 less stamp duty than she should, and she is. I think that The Guardian, In Peril, The Times, very hostile to Labour, got to be said, on the brink, and I think that's all true. I mean, that is the case. Yeah, the Guardian's coverage was watching it online, was very sympathetic and got a bit tougher later on, as I think they realised the political mess she is in. And she may go, she may stay, but if she stays, she's going to be a diminished figure, and she's caused a lot of political problems for the government, because the Chancellor's got a budget coming up. Property taxes may have been one of those areas she was going to raise cash. Much harder to do it now.
Are you suggesting that actually all of those going after landlords, revamping stamp duty or how you pay, all of the bits that have been floated in the newspapers, is that a goner now?
I think it's much tougher when Angela Rayner's around, or even if she went. It's tougher now. I mean, some of those measures are probably very fair and sensible, but it's very much more difficult to do them now.
And the difficulty is, with the Angela Blamer, it's not my fault headlines, is that a very quick search engine check at HMRC guidance very clearly and easily says that if you own or part own more than one residential property, you'll have to pay the higher rates on your new purchase. And that includes if it's owned on behalf of children under the age of 18. It's very easy to find on the HMRC website. The problem she has is she's unbelievably busy. She's running effectively more than one department, if you think about it, and she's living between homes in order to look after a disabled child. Do you have sympathy with somebody who's clearly spinning plates? Yeah. And even if she asked the right question of the right person, would have just not checked it properly because she's so busy as a Secretary of State would be?
Yeah, but all of that is true, and I do have sympathy. When you have children, particularly vulnerable children, you are, of course, wanting to make sure that they are the priority. But I think the Daily Express headline, is about the PM. So is the story going to move from Angela Rayner then to the PM and his authority? And I think that's where she's in the most peril, to be quite honest with you, because if the PM's getting contaminated with this story, I think that's a real problem.
Well, he's shown zero loyalty to people such as Sue Gray, Chief of Staff.
Baroness Gray?
Baroness Gray. Yeah, she hangs around with you now in the ermined part of
all the time.
Of Parliament, or the brutal and I thought unfair way he got rid of Lou Hague, the Transport Secretary, over a mobile phone, some time ago, before she was in politics and a young woman. I mean, Starmer will do what's best for Starmer.
And you're making the point that the deputy leader of the Labour Party is an elected position.
Yeah.
So does she stay in that position even though she might lose her role as Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary then?
Yeah, we're jumping ahead, but if she did go as... it's right. It's an elected position, so could she try and stay as Deputy Leader if she couldn't be Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary? Or if she then has to go as Deputy Leader, then there is an election.
Yeah.
But of course...
So, I mean, just quickly, both of you, do you think she'll survive this, just as a final thought, then?
I think on balance she doesn't survive, but I've already said, I think it is the case that if she goes and said, look, it's my fault, and actually I'm causing problems to the party here, and I think it's the job of to go, then I think she can come back later, and I think that's what should happen. She should take control, is what I'm saying.
It's whether she's a lame duck or a dead duck, and I think it will come down, one, on what the ethics advisor concludes, and two, and I suspect a lot of his decisions will be on this, on the quality of the legal and financial advice she puts forward. Was she, she says, makes an honest mistake, was she misled somewhere, or was it her fault?
Yeah, it's about the evidence she now provides.
It's the paper trail.
Yeah, OK. Well, we'll see what happens, certainly. But, most of the pictures have her in tears or in near tears, don't they, on the front pages. Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme, including the Metro reporting on Nigel Farage comparing Britain to what he called an awful authoritarian state like North Korea.